What makes most women start a business? Is it passion, money, or freedom? Welcome to the Female Founders, the podcast that takes you behind the scene with women who are founders and CEOs to help you start and scale a successful business of your own. I am your host, Nagilia de Ravin. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Female Founders. Today, I'll be having a conversation with Krista Rabidoux, a partner at Andersen LLP with over 23 years of experience in tax strategy, leadership, and executive coaching. Good morning, Krista, and thank you so much for giving me that opportunity to have this conversation with you. You are truly amazing. Just reading about you, it's kind of like, wow, great woman doing great work out there. But I'm curious to know, how did you get started in your career and what led you to work with family businesses?
Yeah, it's been actually quite an interesting journey. In my beginnings, I was actually in the arts industry, so I was in concert production, and then I started to have a family, and I thought, okay, let's do something a little more stable, keep me home, not on the road, and so I went to school and I became an accountant, and an accountant by happenstance because a prof told me I was good in accounting. And so a while ago, I actually became a designated accountant and started working in the world of cross-border tax. So I did Canadian and U.S. taxation, and I still do that. However, at about 10 years ago, I started to recognize a void, if you will, in working with family businesses, and that as accountants and lawyers, for instance, we're really trained to solve problems.
Right.
And create plans and solve problems. However, a lot of the clients that we work with are enterprises, owner-managed businesses, and they're either looking to transition to a next gen or sell it or something. And I found that a question that was often missing was, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? Do you have kids who want to be in the business? And it was always the questions accountants and lawyers were trained to do was about, tax efficient plans, and not what is the impact to the family for this tax efficient plan that you're planning to institute. And so about 10 years ago, I got a coaching certification, and was using it mainly within my business with my employees, as well as with clientele when I was talking with them to try and figure out what they really wanted. Because I think part of what happened was we were really missing a very strong component and clients sometimes come to us and say, this is what I want, but it's because they read it online or their friend told them of this sexy tax plan or something like that. And so what I started to realize is the right questions weren't being asked to figure out what is it they're actually trying to achieve. And so I went and got a coaching certification to try and dig deeper to figure out what it is that you're trying to achieve, which then evolved into me realizing there's a big also void in accountants and lawyers where they're dealing with the founders and helping them with their sexy tax plans, but not actually saying, what does next gen want? And what are they trying to achieve? And that's what brought me to my family enterprise advisor designation, where I was like, okay, so if we're not asking the client the right question, let's make sure we're asking them the right questions to get to the bottom of what they're actually trying to achieve. And let's bring in the family, because the next gen might have a different idea than what mom or dad might have about wealth transfer, business transfer, etc. And how do we work in that whole ecosystem of the family enterprise, which includes a family, a business, and shareholdings, whether it's wealth or a business. So that's kind of how it evolved and morphed into a career, I guess, if you will, where I mainly deal with business transition coaching, where I work with families and enterprises in how to transition their coach either to a next gen, so children within the family, and if it's the children don't want to take over, how do you transition for either a sale of the business, or maybe you have key employees that can be promoted to run the business for the next gen. So there's just so many different layers and dynamics, and until you kind of get into that coaching aspect to really figure out what are they actually trying to achieve,
Mhm.
and what as a family enterprise do they want to achieve, can you kind of then develop the sexy plan.
It seems like it's a lot of listening, and
Oh
and, and
yes,
I and I think that's what you've been doing, and that's the reason why you realized that there was a gap there, and maybe I can fill that gap.
that's
And
right, exactly.
so which means you are a good listener.
Well, I try to be. I try to be. I don't think we're always good at it, but it's, there's also a lot of hidden messages and no words. And so when I'm hosting my family meetings, part of the listening is watching how each of the humans in the room is, their energy is and their dynamic is, and are they speaking or not speaking? And if they're speaking, what are they saying? But
Mm.
as most people know, communication, the words we speak is actually a small portion of communication.
And I think also the body languages, and it
Hmm.
sometimes someone will say ABC, but when you really pay attention to the body language, it's the opposite of that. It's like,
Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
yeah, I'm
that,
happy.
yeah, you're not.
Not likely.
Oh
Right?
my
Exactly.
goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
What made you want to I know you said that you saw the gap and you decided to take a chance, but you are taking a chance in the dark here.
Yeah.
So what was that point that said that okay, what was that decision that said I'm going to take that challenge? Do you like challenges? Not
Oh,
everyone does.
yeah. Yeah, I think, my whole career, I've been an individual who has gone into organizations and helped to kind of turn them around and make them organized, be organizationally structured well, develop a well-working team, whether it's in the businesses I'm running or whether it's with my clients. One of my sweet spots is seeing where to create things to operate a
Mm,
little bit more efficiently, and or um, I, I guess challenge the norm. Right? I am not the stereotypical accountant. As I said, my background is arts, and I am a coach, and my entire family is psychologists, counselors, social workers. So I'm kind of
oh,
like the apple on the right side of the field, but I still have a very strong social
oh yeah.
aspect to my personality. So it's with regards to taking the chance, I have a really solid foundation, thankfully, with my cross-border tax practice and my company. We do cross-border tax practice. So there's a really strong foundation in that. I thankfully and am blessed to have a bit of a foundation to go, okay, I can still do this, but let's morph and create this because there's a real need for it. And so I think that, thankfully, because I'm blessed with the foundation of the accounting background, I went and
Right.
did kind of the logical stuff for a long time, that I can do that for sustainability of finances, and at the same time I can go, okay, where can I provide value? Because I think we all just want to have a purpose, right? And that's one of
Yes.
my purposes. So
I like that purpose. But what makes am I saying the company name correctly? Is it Andersen or do you have a
Andersen,
special
yeah,
Andersen?
Andersen, that's correct.
What what makes Andersen stand out as a company, and what do you enjoy most about working there? I think I have an idea though.
um, so the interesting thing, my background is the large accounting firms. So the large Big Four public accounting firms that do audit. And as an advisor and a coach, I found it quite difficult to be able to be a true advisor and coach with a client. One, because the quantity of work we had to produce was so high
Right.
that we weren't kind of afforded the time to sit back and think and go, okay, what are we actually missing here? Like, what are we not asking? What are we not seeing? What are we not
Mm,
looking for? And when you're doing that, as I said, my purpose, I felt this void in myself, not only in the industry of how do we slow down and not play the quantity game and instead play the quality game, right? And so when I came to Andersen to lead the practice here, it was a matter of um, it's what's termed a boutique firm. meaning we do tax, legal, consulting, advisory, and valuations. Like, we're very niche in what we do, and we do everything that the auditor shouldn't do, basically. So we do conflict-free work. And for me, when I came to Andersen, it was very apparent to me when I first started talking with them to take over the practice here. They had a real, the saying is do the right thing. And so, meaning you have to do the right thing. And if that means that someone should be serving that client, not you, because they're better suited, then you do that. You don't get greedy,
Right.
you don't hoard, it's all about what's the right thing. And creating this best in class and transparency and stewardship as part of our values. And that, if we do the right thing and we follow those things, we're actually going to get the right answer, because we're
Yes.
slowing down, we're putting the right people in the seat to have the conversation, and we're collaborating with each other, because, at the end of the day, we all can't have an expertise in everything. We need to
Yes.
rely on each other to bring in where our strengths are. And when you kind of put that first and the client first, it creates that right answer, right? So for Andersen, I think because that is the core of who we are globally, not just within our practice here in Canada, it really allows us to kind of be that advisor and that coach or
Yes.
that consultant or whatever it might be that takes the time to get to know you, basically, right? And wants to hear your story and wants to hear about you and what you actually need. And I understand not everybody wants that. Like, some people just want, can you just do my accounting? Can you just do my taxes? I don't have the money, and et cetera. And there's not a need for it. And I often say to people, can you afford not to do some of this stuff? Because if you don't do it right the first time, it's going to be very expensive when you're trying to
To
fix
go back
something,
again.
right? And so it's always that balance of when is the right time. And I think startups are probably the ones that are most at risk, because they start up and they can't really afford all the advisors, so they wing it for a little bit, and then they gotta, oh crap, now I need to figure this all out. How do
Out.
I get there, right? So it's very interesting, to be able to have levels. So, for instance, not all clients will work with me. They'll work with one of our senior managers who are learning to be a client lead, et cetera. And because the rates are a little bit less, but it's also because the complexities aren't quite as extreme, right?
Interesting.
So, yeah.
What the company is global. Does that mean you have offices in different locations, or you are just based in Canada and
Yeah.
work virtually?
So I'm based in Canada, and our Canadian practice does Canadian U.S. tax plus the advising, enterprise advising, family enterprise advising, and public sector advising. And the way Andersen is made up is we have global member firms. So I don't do UK, I don't do
United
Asia.
States.
I do United States. So that's the one unique thing in Canada is we do the Canadian and the US component. Because there's so many between Canada and the US, there's just stuff going across the border so much, and humans going across the border so much, that it made
Hmm.
sense for people in Canada to know the US components. However, we have people in London and Australia
Uh,
and Dominican Republic, and like, we have member firms that exist globally in order to help support clients that are a global client, right? Because there is a lot of
yes,
global clients out there as well. So to be able to support them in that way, because kind of, as I said, not everybody can know everything. So
that's true.
yeah,
Why
yeah.
why is it when you talk about cross-border work, why is this so important for businesses today?
Um, I think of one thing, it's kind of ironic, and I don't know if ironic's the right word, but um, during COVID, it was almost like people realized there was a world out there.
True.
And even though we weren't allowed to travel across borders, a lot of people went, okay, how can we do things different? And oh my goodness, like, this whole wide world's open to me, and I can do things
Hmm.
around the world. And businesses and enterprises looked for ways to expand. And that meant other countries or other jurisdictions within their country, but it also meant other countries. And so, when you think about global expansion, there's many things that you need to contemplate when doing that. One is site selection. Are you picking the right location to do your business? Two, you need a good tax person. Three, you need a good lawyer. And before you kind of even open your doors, you should be engaging in all of those conversations to be able to ensure you're doing the right thing. Because like I said before, if you misstep, it can be very expensive. It can be exciting. I don't know how many times I hear people going, okay, I've incorporated, I've set up a company, I'm going to start selling, I'm setting up a warehouse, and then a year later I'm bankrupt because they didn't actually do all the steps of site
So,
selection. Does this make sense? Is there an economic reason that this jurisdiction will want my work? There's a lot of things that kind of go in to make sure it's the right answer.
so pretty much the company can guide with all of that,
Yeah,
from the taxation, from the accounting,
to the
from
legal, yeah,
legal stuff,
as well as
everything.
site
It's like
selection. That's right. Yeah,
a one-stop
that's right.
thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and then working kind of once you've got the good foundation, like I said, then going back to where I was talking about the business transition coaching. Are we
Mm.
transitioning to a family member? Are we transitioning to sell? Are we transitioning to build a leader in the organization to run it for me? What type of transition are we doing here? And what are the foundational pieces we need to create to get there to ensure you get what you want in the end?
So let's say that they launch the business.
Yep.
Um, your company stay with them as a coach, or do you walk away for a while and come back later?
No, it would be everything encompassed in one. Yeah, if they choose. Like obviously our motto again is do the right thing, right? So if they want, I work with actually a lot of clients where I'm only their business transition coach and they use another firm to do their accounting and tax,
Hmm.
which is totally fine. It's
Fun, yeah.
whatever is right for the client is the right answer.
But recently you earned a special designation called FEA.
The
I'm
family
not
enterprise advisor, yeah.
So how does it help you give better advice to family businesses by having it?
Yeah. So the FEA is put on through Family Enterprise Canada, although it designates around the world, but it is a Canadian organization. And I've actually recently joined their board as well because I'm so passionate about this. Um, as I said, a lot of times when accountants and lawyers and financial advisors are working with family enterprises, they focus on mainly two buckets, either the shareholder bucket or the business bucket. And they forget that there's a family bucket. And so the purpose of the family enterprise advising designation is in order to create um, a series of discussions around what is important when you're trying to advise as an accountant, as a lawyer, as a coach, as a financial advisor. What is important when you're dealing with a family enterprise? Because there's many components that go into it. So a family enterprise advisor designation doesn't make you a coach. I got that separately as a coach. I got that certification separately. What it does is it teaches you the things that you need to think of, right? So the human dynamic of the family, the asset dynamic, the governance, how to run and how are
Mm.
things put in place, even just family dynamics, like what do you need to be aware of? And a very common thing is, as an accountant, we'll hear a founder come in and go, I want to do an estate freeze. Let's freeze it, set up a trust, put my kids as beneficiaries, but it'll be a grantor trust in the US, or it's the different terminology in Canada. Um, and but they've never talked to the kids. And then
Ah,
15 years later, the kids are like living in Australia now, let's say, or moved to Canada because I'm in Canada. Kids move to Canada and they go, yeah, you're a beneficiary of this trust. Oh, what? Huh? And that has created a whole dynamic for them in Canada for reporting, et cetera. And so it's just what the Family Enterprise Advisor designation is intended to do is to really bring education to all of those professional advisors that work with family enterprises of things to think of before implementing plans.
then.
right? Things to ask, things to look at. And also it's meant to be multidisciplinary, so not one person is intended to do everything for the family. For instance, I wouldn't be the family enterprise advisor lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, right? So
Right.
I would work with one that understands the dynamics in order to do it. So it's just really intended to be, what are the things that you should think of before putting a plan in place when you're dealing with a family?
Emily.
Because there is a lot.
But what are some of problems, I would say, family businesses face? And how do you help them solve these problems? Because I will guess that from being a corporation or LLC compared to anything
Hmm.
else, if a family will have more problems into it because you have the kids, you have sometimes they bring the uncles, the aunts, the grandparents pass it on to the parents, and now the parents gonna pass it on to the. It's like a whole circle of things going on. So, what
Yeah.
are some of the problems they face?
So I would say, in my history of what I've seen, probably I would say the top three. Let's go with the top three things. One is transfer of shares. When you have
Mm.
some family members that are in the business and some family members that aren't in the business, especially when you're getting down to generation 3 or generation 4, that's going to happen more and more and more. And there's a terminology as fair as an equal and equal isn't fair. And
Mm.
so when working with transferring of the ownership of a business to the next generation, what does that look like? Because if, say, you have 4 kids and you go, okay, everybody's just going to get 25%, but John over there doesn't work in the business, is it fair that he gets an equal portion to the other children? Well, and so working through that, but it has to be open, dynamic conversations with the family, both with the children and the people who are passing the shares, to have that conversation, because that's where lawsuits happen. I don't know how many times I see a will written where the lawyer's like, hey, mom and dad want it to go equal to everybody, right? Will, no problem, right? And
Oh,
then when the will happens, the lawsuits start to happen between siblings because they're like, well, this isn't fair. Like, you're not in the business.
oh,
Why are you getting half of this or a quarter of this, right? So that's number one, is how to transfer the shares to be equal but not fair, or fair but not equal. The second would be leadership development of next gen. And so one of the most common things I hear from a founder, no matter what age the child is they're not ready.
they're not
They're
ready,
not
huh?
they're not mature enough. And it's very interesting to me because I have some families where the children are 45 years old. Like, they're mature. They've been in the business for 20 years. They know the business, right? And or 30 years. And it's a parent-child relationship. And
Yes.
so it's differentiating when you think about the family enterprise advisor 3 circle model, differentiating the family relationship of parent-child to the business relationship, and really it takes a lot of facilitation in the conversations to realize, okay, what does it mean to you for the child to be the next leader? Define that.
Mm.
And then A, are there skills that we need to work on to develop? Or B, do they actually already have them and you just keep seeing them as your child? So
Oh,
you're
yes.
not able to kind of see the business without dissecting and getting rid of the family eyes, right? So that would be number two, of the top three things I see in a business transition. And then number three is really just the operations, because once the leadership changes to the next generation, you have a new CEO, you have a new everything. And when you have a large enterprise with, quite a few employees, there's going to be rock in the boat of new
Mm-hmm.
leadership style, new ideas. It's the next generation. They think differently than the baby boomers. And so it's how do you sustain the operational organization while transitioning leadership, and working with them through what conversations do you need to have with who, how is your organizational structure going to look going forward for your human capital, and how do you keep your operational profitable during this like massive change, right? Like,
Yes,
it's a
yes.
big change when you're changing from a founder to a next gen, especially when it's changing from one founder running everything to multiple people running everything, right? Because it's a completely different dynamic. So I would say those are the top three things that I generally have to work with families on throughout any transitions, which is the transfer of shares, so the actual capital, the wealth, the development of the next gen for leadership, and are they ready, and what does ready
Right.
mean, and then organizational health to ensure that employees maintain uh, uh, the desire to want to work with a massive change in leadership.
You know what? And the last one you said, I seen it actually happens. I know one amazing woman, and that passed away, and she has to take over the company. And a lot of the people that's working, they've been working there for 20, 30 years, and they just look at her like a child is taken, even though she's not a child, but they're
Yeah,
looking at her that way. And she struggled a lot, not because
yeah,
she's a bad person, it's the fact that they just couldn't accept her as the new CEO of the company.
yeah.
And yeah, and I understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. It's I think those are the top three that I see in where the area I practice. There's probably other stuff that exists for people who maybe deal with, family therapy or family governance. I
Yeah,
deal with mainly those areas, so that's the top three in what I see. Yeah, and it's working with the organizations. So I don't always just facilitate meetings with the family. So I also facilitate the new leadership or management within the firm.
okay.
Because what really hurts businesses sometimes is this helicopter leadership, right? You helicopter somebody in, flop them in,
Yes,
and they don't really get to figure out all of the different dynamics. They're just like, okay, here's what I think. And it's exciting. It really is exciting to come in and go, oh my God, I got so many ideas and I'm ready and I'm going to do this. And what you don't realize is there's a foundation, and you have to get to know the foundation before
yes.
you're excited about your ideas and moving it forward. So, yeah,
Well, what advice would you give to someone who handling taxes when they work in more
with
than
some
one country,
families.
I would say. I would say more
Okay.
than one country.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, don't trust Google. Don't trust ChatGPT. They are not
Well said.
accurate. They are not
Well
accurate.
said.
uh, there's a lot of nuances. One of the things we always say when we're dealing with Canadian and U.S. tax. In Canada, we have a football league called the CFL, and then in the U.S. it's the NFL. They both have players on a field. They both have yards. They both run up and down the field, and they both throw a football. However, and they both speak English, but the entire game is different. That is the Canadian and US tax system. So even though it appears as though it's easy, because I mean, for all intents and purposes, our countries operate relatively the same in North America,
Yes.
Canada, and the US. And however, it is not the same at all, not even close. So make sure to talk to somebody who knows what they're doing.
What are they doing?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you, you know, over 23 years of your work,
yeah.
what changes have you seen in the way family businesses grow and succeed?
you know, I think it goes back to the global tax thing where the world is open now. If you think back 20 years ago, people did not move to new countries as easily as they do today. The term nomad exists now, which wasn't really a thing 25 years ago. Like we would go visit countries, but we wouldn't be a nomad spending 2 months in every different country, right? Um, I think the biggest thing that family dynamics now is that movement of human capital. It's no longer if you're born in the U.S. or you're born in Canada that's kind of your roots, and it's going to be your home and you stay there for most of the time, and maybe you'll go to another country for a couple of months or a couple of years, but it's just not the same anymore. There's so much more opportunity on the globe for humans that the human capital is moving around. Um, Also, I mean, every single organization, whether it's a business or not a business with transitional leadership, is the baby boomers retiring. The baby
Yeah.
boomers operated differently. They were in the industrial era. It was about quantity. You think about the new generations coming in, it's about quality. And there's a big transition in leadership in that mentality. And you still see some of this butting of the heads because it's like, no, we just got to do lots and we just got to
Right.
make it efficient and we got to make it, everybody's trying to automate everything right now, which is good. We do need to automate things, but that's very much an industrial era mentality versus what's the quality, right? Which is what the new generation thinks about is what's the purpose? What's the quality? What am I doing? Like I call it the identity era where everybody has to have purpose and has to have like
Purpose.
something that they're trying to achieve, right? It's not the same thing. So it's, whether it's a family business or whether it's a regular enterprise or even public sector, transitioning leadership within it, there is a big transfer of or big change happening in the way people work. And whether it's they're moving around the globe and so they're not stagnant anymore, or their purpose is much different. And so it's really, I almost call it like a translation, right? Like I translate the discussion here to here to help people understand that they're truly trying to say the same thing, but because they're so kind of hyper focused in this identity era and industrial area that they're missing, they can't kind of connect the
Connection. Yeah.
dots, right? So that, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenges that we're seeing.
What keeps you motivated to take on so many important roles? It's like you're doing so much. But also, what tips do you have for women who want to make a big impact in the work and community?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about this morning as I was working out, and I think, if I only had the strength of my thought today when I was in my 20s, like, holy crap, unstoppable. Not that I've been stoppable. I've been pretty adamant in a lot of my career. Sometimes us women are our own worst enemies. We think too much. We worry too much. Um, and it can create a lot of hindrance and fear.
Too?
And, I heard this thing that excitement and fear are actually the same emotion. So whenever you feel scared, just actually convince yourself you're actually excited and move forward,
Mm.
because the internal feelings of it are fairly the same, right? With the butterflies and the anxiety feeling, but one is excitement, so you're okay with it, and one is fear. I would say, if I were to give tips to women, don't try to be everything for everyone. I know I was a mother of three strong females who are all adults now, and I was a single parent. And through that, I rose in my career. And I think there was times when people are like, "Oh, she works so much," and I actually still hear it today. I still hear it to this day. "Oh, you work so much," and I say, "Yeah, but I love what I do." Like, I love talking to people. I love helping people. I like, it's just, it fuels me. It is not work to me, right? I actually am fueled every day by what I do. And I actually don't think I work that much. I really don't. I take my weekends off. I work out. I wake up very early in the morning. I get up around 5 a.m. I meditate and work out and drink my coffee for a few hours before I even start my day. So I block my mornings for me for 3 to 4 hours, that this is Krista time. And that is my time. Nobody else is allowed to enter my time. I do my things for me, my house cleaning, my everything, because I know once I start my day, I get really excited and I don't like stopping until I'm tired. And so I go until I'm tired. And then when I'm tired, I go home and I have an hour wind down and I go to bed. But, I think you need to find what works for you, and don't be apologetic for what works for you. If you are a mom and you love what you do what you do. If you are a mom and you want to spend more time raising your family, raise your family. We actually get to choose. What part of the issue is you can't. I personally don't think you can have both. If you're choosing to raise your family and you only want to work, say, 6 hours a day, that is cool. But you have to be aware sometimes things might move a little slower. They will get there,
Yes.
but they'll move a little slower. But that's a choice, and that's okay. It's totally okay. Nobody out there should be judging any of us for how slow is. Where it comes into that battle is, and this is where you work with a coach or a therapist going, what's my priority? Because I think that's where we sometimes struggle is we can't self-identify what our priority is. We want both
Right.
to be our priority.
Yes.
And then we deal with this internal battle inside of our head going, oh, I'm not a good enough mom. Oh, I'm not a good enough entrepreneur or employee. Well, no, you can be both. You just have to figure out where your scale balance is and then just be okay with it. And that's okay. Right. So
Right.
we are self-doubting prophecies in our own mind, us women. We love to think a lot.
Yes.
But it's also our strength because it makes us very powerful because we can think.
So
So
at the end, really, we just have to find our happy place.
find a happy place. And, coaches are really good at that, working with someone to help them identify where is their happy place, what matters to them, and then be okay with it and move forward. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Krista, for giving me that chance to talk to you. And I love the way you talk and the way you think, and it's outside the box. It's not every
Hmm.
time a woman will admit, as a woman, we think too much. Yeah, we don't want,
Yeah.
we don't want to admit that. We just want to hide it. We don't think too much. Our emotions is in place, definitely. Yeah, we're just lying.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I really enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Female Founders Podcast. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app or connect with us on womel.com so that you don't miss our next episode. See you next time. Bye for now.